Hello and welcome to this lecture where it is a continuation on our discussion on risk management. So we want now to focus on risk assessment and measurement, how we need to go about it in the supply chain processes or activities within the organization. We are beginning, of course, by defining risk assessment and measurement as the process of identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks to determine their likelihood and impact. So risk assessment and measurement is all about identifying what kind of risks. Remember, we have discussed quite a number of them: political risks, economic risks, and then we analyze. And when you are analyzing, we are looking at the potential of that particular risk happening within the supply chain. And once we do that, now we evaluate these risks to determine their likelihood and impact. And then, so that is key for every person. It is key for anybody in the supply chain to be able to understand on how to go about those particular processes. Now, when we are doing risk assessment and measurement, we are guided by a number of things. Number one is to be able to identify these risks. So we are looking it in the aspect of what impact could these risks have on our businesses or on our supply chain processes. We will now therefore use a number of methods. We are going to use brainstorming. Brainstorming is where you come together as a group. Maybe it's the supply chain department within the organization, and be able to hear different people's views and ideas in regards to what risks they can be able to see and think that might occur within the organization or within the supply chain processes. Then from there, we can also use another method of conducting interviews. So we can carry out a number of interviews with suppliers, with organization staff, both in the supply chain department and in any other department. And then also, we need also to review historical data of various risks that maybe had occurred a while ago, years ago, months ago. We can also use that data to be able to project on what is the likelihood of a risk happening. Then from there, we analyze the risks. So we have already identified, maybe we have come up with quite a number of them. So analyze them, determine the likelihood and the impact. So we can use various methods, qualitative methods, quantitative methods. We will, of course, be getting deeper into the discussion and understanding of how that is done. Then from there, we evaluate these risks. So evaluate them to determine their priority. This can be done by considering the likelihood and the impact of each risk, as well as business risk tolerance. So what is the likelihood of any of those ones that we have identified? Excuse me, what is the likelihood of the risk happening? Then the other one is develop mitigation strategies. I remember saying that mitigation is all about ensuring that you put in place activities to prevent the risk from occurring. So once you do the evaluation, then you come up with strategies that are going to reduce the likelihood of risk. Of course, we talk about other strategies like insurance, ensuring that in case of that particular risk taking place, then we can be able to get paid through the insurance. Then we also monitor risks. The business should regularly monitor the risks and update its mitigation strategies. So monitoring is all about you keep checking on the likelihood that this risk might occur or has happened. And of course, the reason why we are doing monitoring is in case we realize that we are on the verge of experiencing any of these risks, then we can put in place measures that are going to assist us to control the likelihood or the escalation of that risk if at all it has happened. Now, when you are doing risk measurement, we use a number of methods. This is what I was just saying we will be discussing in some few slides ahead. So qualitative methods. In this kind of methods, of course, we use subjective judgments to be able to assess the risks. So they can be useful for identifying and evaluating risks. So issues to do with the reputational risks. Those could be maybe conversations that people have had outside the organization in regards to the organization and might affect your reputation as an organization. So they are just views. So you need to come out and counter them up because there are risks in the sense that a negative comment for your business can affect the success or the continuation for that business. Then we have quantitative methods. They use numerical data to assess the risks. So we can be able to use methods that we can be able to measure, like for example, what is the likelihood of us entering into a financial risk? What is the likelihood of organizations running into bankruptcy? What is the likelihood of the organization getting into losses because of maybe activities and things that they are doing that are going to be pulling them back? Now, when we do risk assessment and measurement, we are also bound to benefit as people in the supply chain sector, as organizations. Number one is improved decision making. So you are able to better make decisions because you already know this decision might lead me to this particular risk. And if I take this other route, there is the likelihood that I may not be able to suffer any risk or a minimal risk. So risk assessment and measurement will assist in better decision making. The other one is, what we call reduced losses. By identifying and managing risks, businesses can reduce the likelihood of losses. So better risk assessments will also prevent you from a situation where you will have experienced more losses because when you are doing risk assessment and measurement, you are able to come up with mitigation strategies that will also able to assist you to continue to succeed. The other one is improved compliance. Risk assessment and measurement can help businesses to comply with regulatory requirements. And the other one is enhanced reputation. So when you've assessed and done a risk assessment and measurement, in terms of reputation, your business is at a better place. Your business is a better place. You are at an upper hand or what we call competitive advantage, and you are able now to be able to move forward, and the likelihood of success is guaranteed. Now we have what we call risk identification and mapping techniques. Risk identification, we are saying, and mapping are methods that we use to identify and prioritize various risks that might affect the organization, and also, if not the organization, also the supply chain activities in the organization. So we use this to develop risk mitigation strategies and also make informed decisions about how to manage those risks. And then when we are identifying the risks, we have a number of techniques that we use. Number one is brainstorming. Brainstorming, I've said, is when we identify risks by looking at people's different views in regards to the risk and finding out. When we consolidate all those views in a group, for example, then we can be able to make a conclusive idea on what is the likelihood of either of these risks that have been suggested in the groups. The other one is interviews. They can be used to gather information about risks from experts and stakeholders. So we have those that are good in affairs or things to do with risk. We can consult them. Maybe they are consultants around organizational risk and risk management. We also have a checklist. A checklist can be used to identify common risks in a particular area. And the other one is a document review. So we look at the historical records in regards to the risk within the organization. Do we have proper policies in regards to risk? In terms of solving the risks, do we have established procedures and so on and so forth? Then we also talk about risk mapping techniques. We have techniques like the risk matrices. For this one, they are used to assess the likelihood and impact of each risk. And then the information that we get here can be used to prioritize these particular risks. Then the other one is another diagram we call the BOTI diagram. And these ones are used to visualize the causes and circumstances, the consequences of risks. So these diagrams, their key focus is on what are the causes of risk. So once, of course, we have identified the causes, then it is easier for us to develop mitigation strategies for those particular risks. We also have flow charts. They can be used to map the processes and systems that are at risk. So when we use the flowchart methods, then we can identify potential vulnerabilities. We did discuss the issues of vulnerabilities in our lecture number 1. And also cause and effect diagrams. We can also use those kind of diagrams. They can also be called, another name for these kind of diagrams are Ishikawa diagrams. So also this one is similar to the one that we have just seen in the previous slide. It can also be used to identify various causes of risk. Now, I invite you, based on these 4 techniques, you can also do research in terms of you getting to understand it image-wise. So you can look for an image for a risk matrices, BOTI diagrams, flow charts, cause and effect diagrams, at least to get into the depth of an understanding of these particular techniques. Now, when we do risk identification and mapping, we are bound to benefit in different ways. Number 1 is improved decision making. Risk identification and mapping can help businesses to make more informed decisions about the management or how to manage their risks. So better decision making, reduced losses, improved compliance, enhanced reputation, and so on and so forth. Now we have something we call key performance indicators for risk measurement. Yeah, so key performance indicators, we are saying they are just metrics that are used to measure the performance of an organization against its goals. If we have goals and objectives that we intend to achieve as an organization or as a supply chain department, for example, we need to have what we call key performance indicators. Now, a number of examples of what we are referring to as key performance indicators are the numbers of risks identified. So we are going to use these KPIs to measure the number of risks that have been identified by the organization. Also, the number of risks assessed. The KPI measures the number of risks that have been assessed by the organization. Number of risks mitigated. So we measure number of risks that have been dealt with, and also the cost of risk management. The KPIs are going to measure how much is the organization spending to be able to deal with a certain risk within the organization. Other KPIs would be time to resolve risks. We can also be having metrics that are going to assist us to. These metrics are going to answer the question of how long did it take for us to respond to this risk or to deal with this risk. The other one is the number of incidences. This KPI measures the number of incidences that have occurred. How many the number of risks that have taken place, severity. So how severe is the risk? Remember, we were talking about risks in relation to the environmental risks, and we gave examples of earthquakes. What is the severity of that earthquake? We have those ones that cause a lot of deaths, yeah, within the nations, within companies, and so on and so forth. And then the last one, KPI, is the cost of incidents. Okay, this kind of a KPI is going to measure the cost of incidents that have occurred. Now, when we use KPIs, of course, how do we benefit as an organization? We have improved visibility, so we can be able to see better within the organization, within the supply chain processes. We can also have increased accountability. So these KPIs are going to make us become more accountable. If we are looking at the severity, then it means we cannot be able to exactly tell to what length or to what extent did the risk take place. And then we also have enhanced decision making. So being guided by these KPIs, you can be able to make better decisions. And finally, through using KPIs for risk measurement, you can be able to have continuous improvement. The other one is scenario analysis and simulation. We are saying these are simply techniques that can be used to assess the potential impacts of different future events. Scenario analysis, we are saying, is a qualitative approach that involves developing and asserting a set of hypothetical scenarios. So we do what we call simulation, and we use these mathematical models to be able to generate different scenarios. Of course, these are scenarios related to risk. Now, when you use the scenario analysis method, the benefits that you are going to derive from that is improved understanding of risks and opportunities. We will also have enhanced decision making, and also we will become more resilient. When we become more resilient, or when the organization becomes more resilient, it means it is able to conquer any form of maybe you can call them small risks that might occur, because they have gone over and over to many other risks, or they have experienced bigger risks. So any risk that comes in the course of business, it is meant to make people become more resilient. We have different scenario analysis, simulation ways. We can have exploratory scenario analysis. Of course, when we are doing this kind of method, then we develop and assess a set of hypothetical scenarios that could impact the organization. So we consider a number of factors. We can consider the economic trends. Remember, we talked about fluctuations in currency. We talked about inflation. We talked about increase in taxes. So we can be able now to look at different scenarios, technological advancement and other regulatory changes. And then we have normative scenario analysis. And we are saying this one is used to develop and assess a set of scenarios that are desirable to the organization. So through this, we can develop strategies to achieve organizational goals. Then we have quantitative scenario analysis. They use mathematical models to analyze different scenarios. So this type of scenario is often used to assess the financial impact. And then we can now finally be able maybe to find out how do we conduct scenario analysis and simulation within the organization. Number one is to identify the risks and opportunities that the organization faces. Remember, we were just coming from a discussion of the methods that we use to identify these risks. So identify the risks and opportunities. The other one is develop a set of scenarios that could impact the organization. So these scenarios could also be assumptions. And so we are coming up with scenarios to see the likelihood or the impact. The other one is assess the likelihood and impact of each scenario. And then from there, we can develop strategies to mitigate risks and capitalize on opportunities. Mitigation, I've said, it's all about how are we going to be dealing with the risk. So we can develop those strategies. And also, finally, is we can be able to monitor the risks and opportunities and update the scenarios as needed. So that will bring us to the end of this discussion. I invite you to always have a review of the discussion to get more insight. Do research on these particular areas so that you may be able to broaden up your mind and become a better person.